doing a CIA informational video.
Weird.
Like an acting gig, or is this something else?
Perhaps, or,
I know,
you know,
just
but even so, you're doing an acting gig for the CIA. Who calls you for that?
Yeah.
Into the students.
In case you missed it.
Into the students.
She was literally like a registered actress and starred in a reality TV show, a romance one at that. He met her on a trip to Israel.
No.
There's a video of her making demon eyes, and every time she makes the eyes, the music. It's so ridiculous.
She's possessed.
Erika Kirk just went completely off the rails, and the trigger was Joe Rogan dropping a massive bombshell publicly exposing what he described as her handler training background and deep intelligence community ties. But instead of addressing a single one of the specific claims Joe made with facts or documentation, Erika's response was to go on the offensive, reportedly threatening Joe Rogan directly and suggesting that he could lose his entire podcast if he continues discussing her publicly. Let that land for a second. Someone is out here threatening the single most listened to podcaster on the entire planet and expecting that threat to land with weight. But the bigger question sitting underneath all of this is not about Joe Rogan's security. His platform is not going anywhere, and everyone paying attention knows it. Number, the real question is this: who exactly is behind Erika Kirk? Who is funding her, protecting her, and giving her enough confidence to repeatedly make false public statements, threaten major public figures, and somehow avoid facing any serious consequences or accountability for any of it? Because Joe Rogan just went down the Erika rabbit hole in a serious and public way. And now, he and Candace Owens are reportedly joining forces to surface everything that Erika has been working very hard to keep buried about her background and her past. The walls around the carefully constructed Erika Kirk narrative are developing cracks that are getting harder and harder to paper over.
She's an odd duck.
She's a kook for sure.
You ever seen the compilation of her making crazy eyes?
No.
There's a video of her making demon eyes, and every time she makes the eyes, the music.
For anyone who missed the recent episode of Joe Rogan's show featuring comedian Mark Normand, it was a genuinely significant moment in how this story has been covered publicly. Up until that episode, Joe had been notably restrained about weighing in directly on Erika and the avalanche of allegations that have surfaced since Charlie's assassination. But something shifted, and Joe and Mark went fully in. They called Erika out directly, with Joe using the word psycho and raising the CIA connection allegations in explicit terms, stating clearly that there is more to the intelligence tie rumors than what appeared in the leaked videos that have already been circulating publicly. Now, Joe also zeroed in on a specific behavioral pattern that has been discussed widely online, the unusual thing Erika does with her eyes during interviews, and described it in terms that immediately generated enormous reaction, calling it demonic and expressing that it sat with him in a way he could not logically explain away. And here is the thing about that specific observation: it is not coming exclusively from Joe Rogan, and it is not coming exclusively from people already predisposed to be critical of Erika. People across very different backgrounds and starting positions have watched the same interview clips and come away with the same unsettled feeling about that specific eye behavior. The theories about what explains it range from a nervous tic to poor performance instincts to something considerably more concerning depending on who is doing the analyzing.
I mean, the round that he was supposedly shot with was a 30-06, which is a big round. That's a round that you kill a moose with. And it doesn't even have an exit wound.
Right.
It don't make no sense. It makes zero sense.
But what virtually everyone who has watched the clips agrees on is that it does not read as normal or natural behavior under any conventional framework. There is no innocent and obvious explanation that makes the observation go away once you have seen it. Joe did not stop at behavioral observations. He moved directly into the intelligence background allegations and the CIA promotional videos that Erika has been connected to. His point was precise and worth examining carefully, even if Erika's involvement in those videos was purely as a hired actress with no deeper operational connection. That framing itself raises a question that does not get answered by the actress' explanation alone. Why her specifically? What was it about Erika Kirk that made her the right selection for materials connected to intelligence community promotional content? Casting decisions at that level do not happen randomly or without consideration of background, connections, and specific profile characteristics. And that is exactly when Joe introduced the word that Erika apparently cannot stand having attached to her name: handler. The theory that Erika was functioning as Charlie Kirk's handler rather than simply his wife has been building momentum in online research communities for months. And hearing it introduced into Joe Rogan's mainstream conversation gave it a visibility and legitimacy it had not previously achieved. The response from Erika's team was immediate, and it told its own story. Insiders report that her people reached out directly to Joe Rogan's operation to formally complain about the handler characterization, and that the outreach did not stop at a complaint.
Over this risk analysis, they hear what we're saying, but they don't want to take action.
Well, there are 18 critical infrastructures.
It's weird, but
Very weird. She's doing a CIA informational video.
is it like
Weird.
an acting gig or is this something else?
Perhaps. Or,
I know,
you
I'm
know,
just
I bet even so, you're doing
Yeah.
an acting gig for the CIA. Who calls you for that?
Yeah.
You ever get one of those calls?
No.
No, I never got one of those calls.
And my agent never hit me with that one.
Yeah. It's odd. Well, there's a lot of people that think that she was his handler. She was
Oh.
Charlie Kirk's.
It allegedly included vague but pointed suggestions that Joe could lose everything he has built if he continues making what they characterized as defamatory statements about Erika. Read that again slowly. Someone in Erika's corner looked at Joe Rogan's platform, his audience, his cultural position, and his documented independence, and decided that a threat was the appropriate and viable response. The level of either desperation or delusion required to make that calculation is difficult to overstate. Joe Rogan does not bend to pressure from people with vastly more institutional power than Erika Kirk currently commands. The idea that a vague threat from her team was going to produce a retraction or a cut segment reflects either a complete misreading of the situation or a level of panic that caused rational judgment to temporarily disappear. Candace Owens saw the attempt and called it out without hesitation. When a paid account on X tried to frame Joe Rogan as evil for supposedly mocking Erika, Candace responded directly, pointing out that what Joe said on his show reflected exactly what enormous numbers of ordinary people have been thinking and saying for months. And that receiving a cease and desist for stating obvious observable facts about someone's bizarre behavior and documented history is something she is personally very familiar with at this point.
We said our prayer, and we asked the Lord to protect us.
To the students,
Unable to understand, really.
Yes,
I'll guard my wins.
I don't know portion of where I sit today, which I'm very...
And I was standing in the ticket line.
we'll meet for dinner.
No, of course. But we serve a just God. And I rest easy in knowing that He's sovereign, but He's just. And so let the Lord handle that. Burn the city down. March in the streets.
And of God's merciful love.
To stop.
Candace also made a broader observation on her own podcast that cuts to the heart of why the Rogan episode mattered so much strategically. She argued that Erika and Turning Point are in full public meltdown specifically because they have lost control of the narrative, and that the moment the largest podcast in the world validated what online communities had been discussing and documenting for months, the ability to contain or dismiss those conversations evaporated completely. And Candace also went directly at the CIA angle, specifically addressing how Erika and Turning Point attempted to gaslight the public about the nature and context of those intelligence promotional videos. And then, Candace dropped a claim that immediately sent research communities into overdrive, alleging that CIA and Army intelligence were directly involved in building and shaping the educational institution that raised Erika Kirk from a young age. If that allegation carries substance, it does not just add a layer to Erika's story. It potentially reframes the entire foundation of who she is and how she came to occupy the position she currently holds.
I love that he addressed particularly the CIA documentary because they came out and they were suddenly trying to gaslight us and the CIA didn't produce the documentary. Okay, yes, but the head of the CIA is in it. Okay, you gotta get approval from the CIA to be in a CIA documentary. That doesn't just happen casually. Like he says, are you getting that phone call from your agent? And no, she's not acting. She's specifically referring to her mother's business model, EMPs. So she's not acting. She's involved. And so people, of course, online were so angry about it. The Israel Firsters, Mark Levin, tweeted this. Is this some AI production? If not, what a total disgrace. Then this Eitan Fishberger said, this is some sick stuff from Joe Rogan, as if Erika hasn't been through enough already. How about just acknowledging that you do not have the power to transform reality? Just you're losing.
Erika attended the Tesseract School in Arizona, and the history of that institution is where things get genuinely and deeply strange. And the Tesseract School was originally named the Looking Glass School. And for anyone familiar with the intelligence community landscape, that name does not sit as a coincidence. Project Looking Glass is not an obscure reference. It is connected to some of the most controversial and darkest alleged operations in intelligence history. But the name connection is only the beginning of what makes this institution significant in the context of Erika's background. The Tesseract School was not a conventional private school operating under standard educational frameworks. It was explicitly designed as an experimental approach to learning and human development, created by psychologists with specific and documented agendas. One of the central figures in its founding was Dr. Jerry Frantsev, and the connection between Frantsev and Erika's personal family history runs deeper than a professional one, as Frantsev was the first wife of Erika's father.
Adding more to the Israel firsters' frustrations is the fact that everybody can see that something's not right with Turning Point USA and Erika Kirk, and that includes the biggest podcaster in the world, Joe Rogan. They were so angry because he went on his show and just kind of said water is wet.
Candace raised the pointed and uncomfortable question of whether what was operating under the cover of progressive experimental education bore any resemblance to the kinds of psychological conditioning programs that intelligence communities have been documented pursuing, specifically drawing a comparison to MK Ultra-type operations designed to shape individuals from early developmental stages for specific future purposes. Then there is Nancy Gerard, a woman who was moving up the administrative ranks at Tesseract during the exact period when Erika was a student there. Nancy Gerard was not a conventional educator with a standard academic background, and her family history is saturated with military and intelligence connections that run deep and specific. Her father, Colonel Paul Tracy Gerard, served as the chief military law enforcement officer for the 7th Army stationed in Stuttgart, Germany, and held a high-ranking position within Freemasonry at an institutional level. Nancy's brother carried the rank of major in an elite military honor society. Her first husband served as an Air Force lieutenant. This is not a background profile that typically produces someone who ends up overseeing the curriculum development and student experience at a small experimental school in Arizona.
Tesseract had a principal who would actually climb a ladder at Tesseract while Erika was a student, who had very strong military ties, a woman named Nancy Gerard, Nancy Gerard Hall, she will become. Nancy was a military brat. Her father was Colonel Paul Tracy Gerard, who was a member of the Scottish Rite. A lot of that going on, a lot of Freemasonry going on at Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, out in Kansas. He was a part of the Blue Lodge.
Unless the school itself was serving purposes beyond what its public educational mission described. Then Candace raised the question directly and pointedly. Was Nancy Gerard shaping the development of students at Tesseract with a kind of structured precision that reflected military and intelligence objectives rather than purely educational ones? Then there is the Eastern Europe dimension, and this is where the background story moves from uncomfortable into genuinely alarming territory. In August 1990, Dr. Jerry Frantsev reportedly organized and led a trip to Eastern Europe, officially framed as taking Radford University students to conduct research on gender expectations and the dynamics between men and women in that region. Think carefully about the specific timing and specific location of that framing. August 1990, Eastern Europe, right in the immediate aftermath of the fall of the Berlin Wall. During one of the most dramatic and chaotic geopolitical transitions in modern history, with entire governmental and social structures collapsing across multiple countries simultaneously. And the official story asks us to accept that the purpose of this trip, at this specific moment, to this specific region, was gender studies research.
Tesseract, we have learned, is backed financially by the Bush family, the Walton family, a model that's been designed by psychologists, alongside Dr. Franz Feinstein. I mean, what could possibly go wrong?
Candace made the observation that periods of extreme geopolitical chaos and societal collapse have historically provided ideal operational cover for intelligence activities, because during those periods people disappear, populations relocate in enormous numbers, records become unreliable, and the normal mechanisms of accountability and scrutiny break down completely. And then connect that Eastern Europe thread directly to the Romania connection that has surfaced in relation to both Erika and Tyler Bauer. Erika's documented work with an orphanage in Romania, presented publicly as humanitarian service, takes on a very different character when placed against the backdrop of her school's founding figures, making trips to Eastern Europe during periods of maximum chaos under the cover of academic research. The Romania thread has been appearing consistently in multiple independent investigations into both Erika and Tyler's backgrounds, and its repeated emergence across separate research tracks is not something that careful observers have been willing to set aside as coincidence. So step back and look at the full picture that these accumulated details paint. a school with a name directly referencing a controversial intelligence program, founded by a psychologist with deep personal connections to Erika's family, administered by a woman with extensive military and intelligence family ties, connected to Eastern European operations conducted during periods of maximum geopolitical instability, and a graduate of that institution who ends up romantically connected to one of the most prominent conservative political figures in America, who dies under circumstances that have generated enormous and unresolved public questions, and who then immediately and with remarkable comfort steps into control of the organization that figure built. And when the largest podcaster in the world starts asking questions about this publicly, the response is not transparency or documentation, it is threats. Charlie Kirk built his entire public identity around one consistent message: question everything, demand evidence, never simply accept the official explanation because it is convenient or because questioning it makes people uncomfortable. He said it from stages, he said it on his show, he said it to millions of followers across years of public life. The deepest and most uncomfortable irony sitting at the center of this entire situation is that the questions now being asked about the woman who claims to be continuing his legacy are exactly the kind of questions Charlie would have demanded people ask. Asking them is not a betrayal of his memory. It is the most direct expression of the values he publicly championed every single day he was alive.